Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kelly Oliver. I want to welcome you to our press conference today. Today's call will feature the legal team representing a Nevada sex trafficking survivor who has filed a lawsuit today against 4 of Nevada's infamous legal brothels, their county governments, and Nevada's governor and attorney general for enabling sex slavery. With that, I want to introduce you to our 2 speakers. We have Jason Guanasso. He's a Nevada attorney representing victims of sex trafficking. We have Kristen Price, senior legal counsel with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. We will have a time for questions following the presentation. And Kristen, you may begin.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. We are filing a lawsuit on behalf of a sex trafficking survivor against the governor and attorney general of Nevada, along with Nye, Elko, and Storey counties, the brothels Chicken Ranch, Desert Rose, Bella's, and Mustang Ranch, and the brothel owner and county commissioner, Lance Gilman. Nevada is violating the 13th Amendment by creating conditions that enable slavery in the form of sex trafficking. Plaintiff Jane Doe was trafficked by these legal, licensed brothels and seeks to hold them and their government protectors accountable for the ecosystem they've created and profited from. The state and counties have facilitated a sex trade environment that makes abuse not only possible, but virtually certain. Nevada's sex tourism industry thrives on the demand that Nevada's legal scheme has encouraged. Legal prostitution and sex trafficking are closely linked in Nevada, as elsewhere in the world where prostitution is legal. Sex trafficking happens when and where there is a demand for prostitution. But Nevada's legal system isn't just unconstitutional because of demand, but because of how it is designed. Nevada does not allow independent prostitution. Women in prostitution in the rural counties must be controlled by a brothel under state and local law. Their license is tied to the brothel. They can only have a license for one brothel at a time, and if they leave, they have to get a new license for the new brothel. This is pimping or trafficking by design. Sex trafficking occurs where there is any commercial sex act, including prostitution, and the person involved is either under 18 or induced by force, fraud, or coercion. And the working conditions that the legal brothels impose on women prostituted there meet that standard. Being locked inside the brothels for weeks at a time, some, like Chicken Ranch, have barbed wire fences around them. Having to give the brothel 50% of their earnings, being forced to live on the premises and pay the brothels for room and board to do so, being required to subsidize limousine costs for transporting the men who come to buy them, having to pay $150 to $200 weekly for mandatory STI testing, having to give the brothel access to their phones and email accounts for searches, being required to follow the brothel's rules or face fines. For example, at Mustang Ranch, women lived under the threat of a $1,500 fine looming over them if they were late to a lineup, which came with only 3 minutes notice. A lineup, by the way, is where the man buying the women gets to pick which woman he's going to buy. The fear of being fined caused women to sleep in their makeup and heels during the 12-hour shifts which they were required to work. These practices often cause women to end up in debt to the brothels, and the brothels are doing this in the open. This isn't underground. These are licensed, taxable operations, and the Mustang Ranch brothel is run by a county commissioner who sits on the brothel licensing board that regulates his brothel. These are standard practices in legal Nevada brothels, and they are inherently coercive. The state doesn't ban, investigate, or prosecute this, and neither do the counties. The state does require the weekly forcible STI testing, which happens at the prostituted person's own expense and is not required of the men buying them. This is a coercive condition that brothel owners and governments have imposed on women for over 200 years. Elko County even requires that if a woman tests positive for an STI, she must be detained at the brothel until the state officials contact her. The state's rules also say that if a prostituted woman doesn't successfully make a sex buyer wear a condom, she is the one violating the regulation. Under the 13th Amendment, states cannot create conditions that allow slavery to flourish, including in the form of sex trafficking. But by providing legal cover for the sex trade, that's exactly what Nevada has done. Thank you, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Jason.
Jason, could you turn on your mic on off mute?
Thank you. I apologize. First, as a lifelong Nevada and resident, as a lifelong Nevada resident and Nevada attorney, I'd like to thank the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, Ben Bull, and you, Kristen, for the opportunity to collaborate with you on this important litigation. With every case we file, we continue to expose the systemic sexual exploitation codified and promoted by the state of Nevada and its political subdivisions from survivors who have been and continue to be entrapped, enslaved, and abused by Nevada's system. The Jane Doe plaintiff that we represent in this case is an example of another victim of Nevada's legal system who is trafficked to Nevada and prostituted in legally sanctioned brothels. Victims like her as well have been illegally trafficked through casinos, hotels, escort services, strip clubs, massage parlors, and even on the Las Vegas Strip. These circumstances that I'm describing are especially prevalent during major tourist events like the Super Bowl. Nevada's sex tourism during events like the Super Bowl feeds on an ecosystem of exploitation that satisfies the insatiable sexual appetites and fantasies of mostly men at the expense of those being bought and sold. In fact, the Chicken Ranch brothel, which is a defendant in this case, is 1 hour and 11 minutes away from Allegiant Stadium. This fact alone confuses tourists who come to Nevada, believing, based on all the advertising and marketing around the prostitution industry, that prostitution is legal in Las Vegas. Buying human beings for sex legally or illegally is a violation of human rights, and it degrades human dignity. Slavery and pimp-controlled prostitution are the same experience from the perspective of the enslaved as well as the prostituted. The abuses of power in prostitution and the abuses of power in slavery are profound social injustices, resulting in great physical, mental, and emotional harm to victims that it exploits. As survivor Rachel Moran once pointed out in a book, survivors who have worked in both legal and illegal prostitution describe their experiences of prostitution as paid rape or paid as you go rape or being raped for a living. Legalizing prostitution does not prevent the violence and rape inherent in prostitution. It actually assents to it. Indeed, rape is the defining experience of prostitution. The fear of it, the daily hypervigilance required to prevent it, the crushing physical and psychological trauma experienced by victims when this inevitably occurs. So several studies that we've cited in our complaint, and in this complaint and other studies, characterize this violence that animates prostitution as brutal, extreme, common, frequent, startling, normative, ever-present. Moreover, physical and sexual violence across prostitution types is pervasive, whether one is prostituted indoors, outdoors, for drugs, to pay for rent, on the street corner, in a car, in a back alley, or even in legal brothels, legal massage parlors, and legal strip clubs. Both the threat as well as actual violence permeate the everyday existence of victims of trafficking in Nevada's legal system. Legalizing prostitution has not done nothing to quell the prevalence of sex trafficking in our state. Now, brothel owners in Nevada, like defendant Storey County Commissioner Lance Gilman, they're nothing more than common pimps who have been sanctioned by state law to broker in the bodies of exploited women to fulfill the sexual appetites of men who travel to Nevada specifically to engage in prostitution, especially during major events like the Super Bowl. Many of the women prostituted in Nevada's brothels are controlled by outside pimps. And despite the fiction that's created that they are independent contractors. As we point out in the complaint, one federal court even acknowledged this problem by citing a study that found that pimps remain common in control of those who are being prostituted in brothels, and some assaults against prostituted women occurred within the legal brothels. Nevada is the only state in the union which allows for commercialized prostitution. Nevada's legal brothels are estimated to generate more than $75 million in revenue per year, while at the same time fueling Nevada's illegal prostitution market, which in Las Vegas is estimated to gross over $5 billion per year. Nevada local governments that have legalized prostitution, they receive hundreds of thousands of dollars from brothel taxes and fees. These entities, under the cover of state law, then are permitted to co-act as de facto pimps, and they get their cut of what brothels charge to prostitute these women who are trafficked to the state of Nevada. Meanwhile, in jurisdictions where prostitution is illegal, prostitution is aggressively promoted as a tourist attraction. As they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or some other cute marketing slogan that is used to celebrate vice at the expense of countless victims. This has been exacerbated since the NHL and the NFL have moved professional sports teams to Southern Nevada. Both legal brothels and black market purveyors in Las Vegas have positioned themselves to take advantage of the tourists coming from all over the country to have a good time at the expense of the exploited. And most men who buy women for sex come from out of state as a result of these marketing activities and these tourist events that Nevada promotes. Bringing the Super Bowl to Nevada is a part of Nevada's overall effort to promote sex tourism in the state. The women bought, sold, and trafficked to Nevada often come from other states and other countries because Nevada is considered a premier market for pimps, traffickers, and johns. These observations and conclusions directly support the claims of our client in this lawsuit and the complete abolition of legal prostitution, because legalization directly contributes to the harms our client has suffered and the related sex trafficking problem we have here in Nevada. Moreover, legal prostitution and sex trafficking encourages a culture of violence against women. Nevada has one of the highest rates of domestic violence in the entire nation. So I'll just close with this. Prostitution is dangerous and dehumanizing because not because it is illegal. It is illegal and should remain so because it is dangerous and dehumanizing. And I think the question that people should be asking is, who benefits from this exploiting system? Who stands to gain from legalization? Well, I'm here to tell you only the state of Nevada, the counties and subdivisions that tax this industry, the pimps, the owners of brothels. Those are the people that benefit. Our client, though, the client that we represent in this case, and others similarly situated who have been exploited in Nevada's legal system, they do not benefit. In fact, they've been irreparably harmed by Nevada's legal system. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kristen. At this time, I can open it up for questions from anyone who might be on this call. While we wait, feel free to either speak or put your question in the chat. While we wait, I did want to elevate a few graphics that we have. Andrew, if you could put a few of those up so that it can really be spelled out what we're talking about here. Okay, just to give everybody an idea of some of what you would find in Nevada here. If there are no questions, I'll circle back with our speakers, Kristen and Jason. Were there any other points that you wanted to bring up as part of today's lawsuit?
I could say something briefly about the 13th Amendment, Kelly. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
One thing about the 13th Amendment that's pretty distinct from other constitutional amendments is how categorical it is. So for rights like the right to freedom of speech and other things in the Bill of Rights, there's often language that kind of qualifies it and basically says, this is about what the government can and cannot do to you. But the 13th Amendment doesn't actually have that type of qualification. It's just categorical. It says, this is abolished. Slavery and voluntary servitude cannot exist. And there's some case law from the early 1900s where the Supreme Court basically said, if you have a legal system, if you have laws that on their face are neutral, but in the context that they exist in are actually enabling or promoting debt bondage and other forms of slavery, they're unconstitutional. And so we're arguing that the same is true here. Nevada has a system that in particular encourages debt bondage in the brothels, and that is what makes it unconstitutional, this enabling complicit principle.
Thank you, Kristen. Jason, any final words?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out an irony because this litigation is going to be against the state of Nevada, and they'll make certain representations in their briefing as they have in the past, but what they represent in their briefing kind of contradicts their own statements. In fact, in a grant application that the state of Nevada prepared in an effort to receive grant funding to combat sex trafficking in our state, the state of Nevada admits, and I'm just quoting from their grant application, they say, Nevada is a major national and even global destination because Nevada is also synonymous with legalized prostitution, gambling, and other vices. And they go on to say that Nevada epitomizes the concept of adult entertainment. It's a mecca, and it averages over 50 million out-of-state visitors per year. Very little known fact they go on to admit is that completely unknown to most visitors is that prostitution is not universally legal in Nevada. The brothel businesses, they go on to say in their application, operate on the premise widely accepted in Nevada that brothel prostitutes are all adults truly exercising their voluntary, free, and informed choice in this quote unquote profession. While the premise is arguable on at least two counts, most prostitutes, the Attorney General's office went on to say, enter the business in their early to mid-teens, and they are rural brothels specializing solely in young Asian women that speak no English at all. Brothel workers are not employees, but are contracted workers who frequently have an outside manager. So I say that, and I quote them because Nevada recognizes that this is a problem, but has done nothing to stop it. Nevada recognizes that the legal market is feeding the illegal market, but refuses to make that connection and do something about it. And these observations and conclusions, they directly support the claims that our client in this lawsuit is making, and really support a complete abolition of legal prostitution, because legalization directly contributes to the harms our client has suffered and the related sex trafficking problems we have in Nevada. I think these inequities and harms in prostitution have been irreparable to our client and are simply unacceptable. Therefore, I think Nevadans should pay attention to what we're doing in this lawsuit and support what we're doing and call for the state on its own initiative to repeal the laws that allow for this form of exploitation, especially in a time like when we're bringing tourists here from all over the country, all over the world to the Super Bowl. But more than the Super Bowl, we're bringing them here to satisfy their appetites and hungers that go beyond sports entertainment and really feed the sex tourism industry.
Thank you, Jason. At this point, we will conclude our call. I just wanted to make sure if you are tuning in and if you would like more information about this case, or if you would like a copy of the complaint that we have filed, feel free to send an email to us at press@ncose.com. That's press@ncose.com. And if you have interview requests as well, send those over. We appreciate your time, Kristen and Jason, today. Thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.